Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. For all things Vespa, check us out, ScooterWest.com. They got a new Vespa, vintage Vespa. We got you covered. Over 40,000, I think it's 400,000 items that we have in stock right now. Got a pretty large warehouse here. We keep everything in stock. On to the subject of this video. Say you go to pull your rear brake, which is on all Vespas, modern Vespas is going to be on your left side, and all of a sudden the lever just pulls right to the grip. Well, guess what it is? It's most likely going to be your brake cable. On the Vespa LX, Primavera, ET2, ET4, any of the models that aren't the GT or the 946, they have a mechanical rear drum brake, and they use a mechanical cable to move the physical force that you act on a lever to the rear drum. And as all mechanical things are, they wear and eventually they break. So I'm going to show all the steps on how to change this cable, including the steps of how to replace the left-hand lever, which is more common than a cable breaking. And the scooter falls over, womp, 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 broken lever, got to change it out, no big deal. Show you how to do that. Also show you where the SPIC throttle cable is located. Not very likely that these break, but we do sell them, so I know they break, and I've changed a couple over the years in service. Quite a few different arrangements for the throttle cables. You may want to give us your VIN number for the scooter so we can look up the specific throttle cable. Some scooters use 2 throttle cables, some use 1, such as this 2006 LX. But on to the subject of this video, let's jump into changing this brake cable here. So before we can even replace the cable, we got to remove the inner bodywork. So as with all modern Vespas, you got this monocoque steel chassis, but they have inner plastics for the glove box, the handlebar covers. Got the headlight cover off. I already have the glove box off. You can watch the previous video I posted, which is replacement of the speedometer cable, which is the most likely cable to break on these scooters. Shows how to take those 2 items off. But in addition to the glove box and handlebar covers, we're going to remove the floorboard, these side skirts, as the cable kind of runs down the center channel. It may be possible to fish it through, but take the extra minute to remove the plastic parts. So quickly, I'll go ahead and remove the plastic parts, just a basic Phillips screwdriver. There's these little clips on both the left and right side. And those kind of terminate the end of this leg shield edge mold that pulls right off. A lot of times if the scooter falls over, it may just hit on the edge mold. No big deal there. So. And on the center floor strip, you saw I kind of pulled it out, kind of knew right where to pull. There's this hidden screw right there. Let's go ahead and remove that. You either have a magnetized tip or whatever. Keep track of the screws, they're all a little different. Moving on to the back. You got this passenger foot peg. It's got a single screw that holds that. Lift this little guy, and then you can remove these little end caps. Probably don't need to do that, but I did. Both left and right cowl skirts, as I like to call them. I don't know what the technical name is for them, but again, they use, oftentimes they'll have 2 different screws that retain that. So there's that one, and on this left side, there's a smaller screw for the bottom. So keep that in mind. Again, this is a little redundant. I've published other videos on removing the bodywork on these scooters, but kind of just go over quickly what you need to remove. Get the little spark plug access cover out of the way, single screw that holds that. So all the fasteners are removed from the floorboards, pretty much exactly the same steps on an ET2 or ET4. Primavera and Sprint, a little different. Again, refer to many of my other videos on the Primavera and Sprint and removing all the bodywork. Whether I'm installing a light kit, there's many videos where I take a Sprint all the way apart. I think there's one where I never finished. It's like a paint shop video on how to like disassemble a Primavera or Sprint for getting the glove box off. So I pretty much just pulled the whole floorboard kind of like in that motion, so I'm not scratching the bodywork. And there's the inner skeleton of a modern Vespa, and there's your cables right here. So they got these little metal clips, kind of hold the cables in place. Pretty straightforward. Sometimes I've seen a zip tie holding the cable. The throttle cable goes up into a little clip that's pretty much right where my finger's pointing. Pops right out, no big deal there. We'll go ahead and cut that little zip tie. FYI, if you ever want to change the ignition coils, right there. So we'll start from the back. Whether you're just changing a simple lever, you're going to need to loosen the brake cable adjuster. This is your rear brake cable. It's kind of routed from the frame through these pair of brackets here, a third bracket right there. There's the mounting point that we use a 5mm Allen to loosen. And here's where the magic adjustment happens here. So on all these modern Vespas with rear drum brakes, this is a lock nut right here. Sometimes if you got a really rusty scooter, it's not very fun to turn. But you want to loosen that lock nut. You know, I'm going to take it several turns out. And now you can kind of pull the brake arm forward a little bit. I'm just doing by hand, don't need a wrench on it. Then you can pull the cable adjuster off the end. So there you go. Now you have that loose. You can go in here with a 5mm Allen. I'm using one of the ball-end T handles, kind of makes the job a little easier. And check this out, there's a little bracket that's going to come down along with the single Allen screw that holds this here. So there's the Allen screw right there and a little bracket. We can just leave that bracket alone, and now you can pull the cable out. If you're just doing the lever, you don't need to go that far. All you got to do is just take the adjuster off so you have the free play on the cable. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the brackets from the oil pan. And I like to do these one at a time. I don't really want to end up with an oil pan leak. So what I'll do is I'll remove one, just kind of have it. I don't want to leave those screws out. Go ahead and torque that one back. Don't need to. And then the last one here. These little brackets, the way they come right off, you can reuse them, or you can buy new ones from us. Look them up. We have them in stock. They just kind of split, and they'll come right off the cable. No big deal there. So now on to the lever. So if you're just going to replace the lever, again, just remove only the adjuster. The lever is going to feel like this, whether it's got a broken cable or the lever adjuster is broken. This is a common part to replace. If the scooter falls over, and sometimes it does a little more damage than breaking the lever, it may break this perch. Or the mirror stem breaks off. You can replace this whole entire assembly. Also, it houses the brake switch, which is pretty simple. Just, it's a plastic brake switch, unscrews. I don't want to disconnect it, but you get the idea. It pulls right out. That's the switch that activates the brake light whenever you pull it. To remove this brake lever perch, I would recommend removing this rear handlebar cover. And after you do that, there's a single Allen screw right up here, and you loosen that, and then you may need to either cut the grip off. I'd recommend just getting a new grip and you glue a new grip on, or you can use compressed air and blow the grip off, possibly reuse the grip. So you loosen this Allen key right here, and you're able to slide this whole assembly off, obviously once the cable. So just FYI, if you ever need to change that out, you're nearly there at this point. A lot of times I'll see them loose, so the lever's a little loose here, but say this whole thing's loose, you could tighten that Allen key, and usually that's evident because your left mirror's flopping around in the breeze, so tighten that little Allen. Pretty simple to do. You could do it just by removing the mirror, you can gain access to that. So underneath the lever pivot, there's a single 6mm nut, and you put 10mm wrench on it. And once you start removing it, then you could pull the pivot screw right out. Nothing's going to go anywhere, so keep the screw and the nut together. And then next you got to watch, there's going to be a little spring that's going to want to fall out. So I got a little spring there. And now we'll pull the cable. There is a built-in spring into the cable. And typically I like to see how I pull the cable away from this little slot. Then you can flip it over and you can see how the cable engages. So pretty much if you're going to change a lever, I'm holding the cable. It's enough resistance where I can just hold it. And that's how that goes right there. So this lever's good, but obviously if you had a bent lever, it's the perfect time to change it out. So on to removing the cable. You can see it's all loose at this point. It goes right through this funny little zip tie thing. You can, if you wanted to, you could cut it and reattach it, but I'm not going to do that. And it kind of snakes with the wiring harness right there. So pretty much just pull it right through. Obviously it'd be a little easier if the zip ties weren't in the way, but no big deal doing it with the zip ties in the way. And then last, it goes through one more plastic fastener that's approximately right here on the other side of the frame. And you can see the cable pushes right through that fastener. So there's the cable. Now it's all removed. Specific to the model, whether it's an LX or ET or Primavera, they all use slightly different cables. You can see there's a spring. Ironically, I'm not going to replace this cable. There's no problem with it, but I'm just showing the steps. This bike, I did change the speedometer cable. Other reasons you may want to change this, maybe the cable is just really stiff. It is possible to lubricate the cable. You could put a little plastic bag up here and zip tie it around and let oil drip, for several hours through it. I don't know. I haven't really found the need. These are Teflon lined cables. They kind of last the lifetime of the cable. Once the cable breaks, it's done. You just replace it. No real need to lubricate the cable. So to get the cable back in, no big deal. Just pretty much reverse of what I just did. So get the cable right through that little plastic loop in there. Keep on pulling it up. And no big deal if you pull more than you need. I'll get on the other side. I'm going to feed it through those zip ties that hold the wiring harness. Kind of goes right behind all this fun stuff right here. Does not go through this loop. That little loop is just for the front brake hose and the speedometer cable. So leave that alone. And we'll go ahead and put some grease on the lever and get the lever installed. So I recommend using something like this Maxima thick waterproof grease. You always have tubs of this all around the service. You can see from the factory, they never put enough grease on these things. It's ridiculous, but whatever. That's beside the point. So get that all greased up. You have the cable pretty close, closely routed to the left-hand lever perch. I'm going to go ahead and pull the cable. And if you don't have the strength to pull it, you can always use a needle nose, but to help you out. Not too much of an issue, but there is definitely some strength on it. Drop the little spring. The little one where it has a bend stays in there. The other thing is the grease will hold that spring into place. Otherwise it's going to want to flop around. So next we'll go ahead and get the lever partly in there. And you can see the hole almost lines up. Get your flat blade screwdriver, go ahead and tighten the screw down. And once the threads protrude, you could get the nut started. And I'm holding the screw in place while I'm tightening the nut here. And that's all you gotta do. Lever feels perfect, everything's smooth, no problems with the cable there. So make sure everything turns freely before you button it back up. You know, I'm going to put these little metal clips back over the cables, kind of just holds them loosely in place. Pull back a little bit of the slack here. And there you go. So now the cables are all, you know, snugged back up. I'm not going to put the zip tie on just yet. Wait till I get it all hooked up in the back of the scooter. So go ahead and put these little clamps back on. Just pretty easy. It's self-explanatory. Just fold the metal back over. Just recommend putting them both on right now. And kind of the reverse order of how we took it apart. And if you want to torque these, it'd be like 6 to 8 pounds. Go ahead and lift the cable. You could bend the bracket down if you want, make it a little easier to pop into place. And one thing you gotta keep in mind, you may need to adjust the position of the cable. So you could see the metal section of that cable right there kind of lines right up, and I was pushing some of the cable up there. I might make some minor adjustments to the cable up at the top. But before you even do that, there's this little spacer here. If you want, you to put a little grease on it. It's usually always dry. It's a little barrel there. But you want to get the cable right through it. And then slide that guy forward a little bit. It's kind of holding in place right now. Then you put the little bracket. Using a ball end makes the job way easier. If you're using a little Allen, it's probably gonna take you a little while. Just snug that. And next we'll put the cable adjuster on there. Maybe worthwhile to put a small amount of grease of some sort in there, because those do tend to want to seize up, especially if they're used in the wet weather. So let's check the free play on the left lever. It could go a tiny bit tighter. You always want to have some free play on this lever. The problem is, as the scooter heats up, sometimes the brake drum will start dragging. So right now the rear tire spins pretty freely. I'll go ahead and turn the adjuster, maybe 2 more turns in. Okay, that feels about right. So you can see that's where the brake starts to engage right there. There's about that much free play. The end of the lever moves like an inch, inch and a half or something. That's right where we want it. Now we'll go ahead and tighten the adjuster lock nut. So that's pretty much everything you need to do to get the cable in. Obviously I have a little bit too much slack down here. Pretty easy to rectify. You just kind of scooch the cable around. A little bit more goes up there. They did have a zip tie. I wouldn't say the zip tie is all that critical, but I don't know, engineers had some reason they put it there, so I'll put one back. And there you go. So that's pretty much how to change the brake cable, rear brake lever, left-hand brake lever, or even the perch for the brake. If you want to do the throttle cable, pretty much follows the similar steps. The only difference is you're going to take the whole throttle assembly apart, which is located on the right side, and this threads into your throttle assembly, and that threads and hooks onto the carburetor. So very similar to changing a brake cable, just different types of points that attach. And you have an adjuster both on the throttle side and the carburetor side. So we'll get the bodywork all back together and get this LX back on the road. So pretty much all the reverse steps of taking the bodywork off. The only tricky part is the glove box. You can watch a prior video on replacement of the speedometer cable for some tricks on getting the glove box latch hooked back into the ignition. So let's speed this up. We'll just get all the bodywork on and we'll be done with this job. So there you go. Got a fresh brake cable in there. Actually the same brake cable if you watched the whole video. But gave you all the steps on how to change out the brake cable, replace a lever, replace a lever perch that also holds a mirror. Lots of good stuff there. Hope everybody found that pretty useful. If you're wondering about the bodywork, you can look at a lot of my previous videos on taking apart the bodywork, whether you're dealing with the ET4 or LX, which are very, very similar, or the newer platforms such as the Primavera and Sprint, have whole entire videos on taking all the bodywork off. Don't really want to repeat that in every video, although I kind of do. Until next time, this is Robot here for Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com here in San Diego. You can find links to all the parts of the part numbers all in the description of this video. Everything from the lever and the cable for the LX. If you're looking up a cable for another bike, you might go on to our website, punch in the year, make, and model, find out what cable fits. I find the rear drum brakes, they last quite a long time. Something to be said about the old drum brake. Lots of friction material. I don't see them worn out too frequently. Oftentimes I'll see the cable broken before you wear out a set of brake shoes. Unbelievable. But that's the way it goes with these Vespas with the mechanical brakes. I wouldn't call it maintenance item, but it's something that eventually will fail, as with any mechanical system. See you later. Robot here.